we're all struggling with something. And so we need to just like realize that and figure out how we can all help each other. Because it not only takes a village to raise a child, I think it takes a village to raise each other. I think we're all children still. Like, I don't know if we ever get past that point of, needing other people.
Today's Into Healing guest is Jason Sturgill, a designer, art director, award-winning illustrator who has built community by sharing mental health challenges through his art. This is Into Healing, and I'm your host, Mira Kaddoura. Hi, Jason.
Hi.
I'm so grateful to have you here.
Oh, thanks. I'm honored to be here.
It's like a longtime friend coming to just chat with me over tea.
Yeah, for sure. There's people watching us.
So I just want to start by how did you grow up? Just give us a little bit of context.
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town, fairly close to here, 45 minutes away in Southwest Washington. So I kind of always say that I'm from Portland because a lot of my sort of teenage years was spent in Portland. But pretty small, like mill town, pretty religious. And I grew up in a religious home. We went to church every Sunday, and it was the type of church that speaks in tongues, and you can get healed and all that sort of thing. So it was much different, I think, than a lot of other.
That's so interesting. You don't hear a lot about that in this part of the country.
Yeah, no. My parents divorced when I was 5. My dad was in the military, and so we were living in Germany at the time, moved back to where my mom was from in Longview, Washington. And so I grew up with my mom for a lot of my childhood until middle school, and then she remarried. So there was that whole just kind of adjusting to a stepdad that was kind of difficult, and not being with my dad, which ended up, getting harder and harder every year. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like, was really into skateboarding, music. It's a pretty small town. You don't have the internet or anything like that back then, so you kind of are, staying out as much as you can, skating, and growing up in a small town, you're not really, and without the internet, you're not exposed to a lot. And so I had no idea, like, not a lot of people in my family had gone to college, and so I didn't really have much to like reference in terms of like what I wanted to do. So I knew I just wanted to get away from home, and I knew that I wanted to make money because we didn't come from money. So I that was important to me at the time, and so I'm like, what's a job that makes money? And it was like seeing my guidance counselor, and it's like physical therapy. That was like a job at the time that made money and whatever. And so that's what I thought going into like my first year of college, but quickly realized that was not for me, and ended up studying marketing. That was kind of what I graduated with a degree in, but I always tell people that my education was really not in school, in class. It was more of like what I was doing outside of the school. I started a business when I was in school, and so that was the real education.
What kind of business?
So I found out with the marketing degree, if I started a business, I could get college credit. And through, putting on all the events and just being a music fan within, the small college town and going to like house shows and stuff like that, I had met a lot of the bands that were coming through, and there was Modest Mouse at the time, was just kind of starting out and, doing house show tours and stuff.
Amazing.
And so I was like, I could start a record label. At the time, like the stuff that I was playing at the college radio station, there were like, labels ran by, one person, like you could see, like look on the back and, write them, email them or whatever. It was just like kind of at the start of email, and so you all of a sudden had access to all these people that you could just reach out to. And so I knew that I wanted to see if Modest Mouse wanted to release something. I asked them, would you want to put out a single? And they said yes. And so that was a huge learning experience. Like, I was taking marketing classes, but I was really learning about marketing through, like, how am I going to market this record? And ended up working with, a promoter that sent out the singles to different radio stations and, charted on, the different magazines and things like that. And so it was, that was the real experience.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Walk us through what happened from that point on.
Being a creative person wasn't in my vision at all. Like, creating the, like, sort of producing the sort of record and everything like that was kind of the creative aspect, but I didn't even, I think, view that as creative. But I was doing things like picking the color of the vinyl, working with, the drummer to, like, create the artwork. And so looking back, it was creative, but I didn't necessarily called myself a creative or anything like that. But I think as I was getting closer to finishing school, I started realizing, like, working with, poster artists to design posters for the shows for the university, gig posters, screen printed, event posters. And I was like, there's all these different avenues of like places that you could work in that are more creative and doing what I'm interested in. And advertising got exposed to me. Like, I realized I could, that was an avenue that I could go down. So I started getting interested in advertising. And then moving to Portland after I was done with school. And being exposed to Portland growing up, like, I knew that there was an advertising scene, I think, especially when I was in college. I started finding out about that and Wieden and Kennedy and everything. So I think that was when I started thinking about, like, okay, well, what would I want to do? And I think I started thinking, like, I want to be a creative, but I had no idea kind of, like, how to get there. So it was, I think, a lot of trial and error, like working with different studios and agencies, and just the goal at the time was, like, how do I get into Wieden? That was kind of a thing.
Interesting.
Because it was sort of, if you want to be doing anything interesting in advertising in Portland, and, like, that's what was happening. So.
And then how did you get in there?
So after I'd done the Modest Mouse record, I was going to put out a second record, and I had reading fanzines at the time of, like, different bands, indie pop bands, which is what I was really into. There was a band out of New York that I really liked, and the guy from the band was going to Cooper Union. Had emailed with him and said I really liked their music. And then he ended up coming out after he graduated and working for, like, a small, just one-person design studio, but eventually ended up getting in at Wieden. And so when there was an opportunity that came up, it ended up being interactive producer was the job that I sort of got in on, and that was kind of like I was making my own websites back then and kind of had a lot of just my own DIY experience of that sort of thing. And it's amazing. Like, looking back now, there's, like, no way. Like, there's no way I would have gotten that job with the experience that I have had. And so it was just sort of right place, right time, knew the right people for sure.
You had cancer at age 27. How did that experience and journey look like for you?
Well, it was complete shock. Even when I went in to see the doctor at the first time, they were like, "Oh, it's probably nothing. Like, you're far too young to have anything, that serious or whatever."
How did you even find out?
Peeing blood.
Oh, wow.
Bladder cancer, and so that'll say something's wrong. So yeah, going in, and then they're like, we're gonna do some exploratory, surgery, see what we can see. It's probably nothing. And then I wake up, and my mom's there, and they're like, well, we have, bad news. It was cancer, but we were able, to remove it. So
And then that was done? That chapter was done? Or did you
Yeah, I
still
mean,
have to?
I had to do, follow-up with the doctor. Like every year I would follow up. And it wasn't like I was immediately back to work. I definitely had, like, part of the procedure had me, bedridden for a little bit. But yeah, luckily it's been so far so good.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
You only started illustrating in your 30s after your cancer diagnosis. What did your illness teach you?
Having cancer, to trying to, realizing that I wanted to focus on becoming a creative. I think still at that point I was, doing roles that were not in the creative realm, and that I think having cancer was just like, okay, I'm gonna
Gets real.
yeah, exactly. And so, I tried to go back and, make it work at Wyden, but I was actually told at one point that you're either a strategist or nothing. And so that was another big
That's so
wake-up call.
encouraging.
Yeah, I know. And I was just like, oh, wow, well, I guess I'm nothing. So then I just, took whatever I could to, like, figure out what the next step was going to be, and ended up, because I had done design. That was all just sort of self-taught, working on the record label stuff. I was,
Posters. And
yeah, Microsoft Publisher at the time was, laying out the 7-inch record design and everything. But so I ended up going back to community college to kind of like brush up on all these things that I had taught myself. And at the same time, I started working at Dark Horse Comics in the studio, the design studio. So working on packaging was a lot of what I did there for the toys that they were putting out. My wife worked there at the time too. So
is that where you met?
no, actually we met at a music festival in San Francisco when I was promoting the band from New York. I was there. They were playing. So, yeah.
Awesome.
But yeah, so Dark Horse was kind of the first step in the kind of going into creative. I mean, I guess the other part that's kind of taking a step back of, since I wasn't able to be creative at work, and again, this was also not necessarily looking at myself as creative, but I was just a fan of illustration and creative. So while I was at Wyden, I created an online art gallery where I, would bring all these different artists. It was my excuse. I mean, both of those instances of like starting the record label, running all the shows at school, and then starting an online art gallery was like my excuse to reach out to like my favorite people. Like, I think that's what a lot of the things that I did was like, how can I, reach out and help promote and help, be a part of their creative journey as well.
Yeah, it's wild when I think of that time. I think of you as one of the most creative people in that building. So it's just quite interesting. Like, there's what people tell you are, and there's who you are.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be quite different.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things where I didn't have one lane that I was going down. I had so many different interests, and while I was at Dark Horse, I was still, working on the online art gallery. Like, that kind of continued, and I ended up, after Dark Horse, I got brought in by a person that was working at Leica. They were just transitioning from Vinton Studios to Leica, and wanted me to come in and basically bring in artists that they could show that they could work in different styles other than, the claymation styles that they were kind of known for at the time. So a lot of the artists that I'd worked with on the gallery, I brought in, and they were some of the people that they ended up doing, some commercials with, because that was the part. I was more on the commercial end side of Leica, and it was also when they were transitioning to the new name, so it was a kind of interesting time to be there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What made you want to start sharing your mental health struggles, and how did those begin?
It probably goes far back when I was blinded with a BB gun when I was fairly young, just starting high school, and spent a summer on the couch trying to recover from that. And so I think since then I had lots of bouts of depression.
Do you think it was triggered from
I don't
that
know.
accident?
No, I mean, I think there's lots of things. Like, I mean, now looking back at my childhood, I had, child abuse early on in my youth, and, having my dad not be there. Like, there's lots of different things that I think all contributed to it, possibly, and, genetics, what have you. But, so I think it was when I first started really expressing it, though, was after leaving Leica. I got an opportunity to go work in Nike skateboarding, Nike Action Sports, and through somebody I worked with at Wyden. And it was there that I think I'd been there for like 4 years, and I pretty much had a mental breakdown. And it was also right when I was having a kid. We were about to have a kid. I'm having this mental crisis, and I just quit. And I think that is when I just it was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, where I'm like, where do I go from here? And
what was that crisis like? Like, what was happening?
It was just unbearable. Like, I couldn't go to work. Like, I think a lot of it was just, even looking back now, I think it was lack of confidence. I think there was, just a lot of self-hatred, or negative self-talk, or it was just a multitude of things. But so I think, and I had started going down the creative path, which was great, which is what I wanted to do. But I think I still didn't, for whatever reason, that wasn't the path that I wanted to continue down. I think it didn't feel right. I don't know if it was corporate environment, just felt stifling, or there was maybe too much pressure. I felt maybe, I don't know. It's hard. It's been a while, but so after that, I ended up going to grad school for social practice, art and social practice. I got my MFA at Portland State. And then that was sort of another big turning point. I mean, going through grad school was great to kind of just like this time of self-reflection. But at the time, I still didn't really know like what was my creative vision. It was like working back at Wyden, like I didn't have a lane that I was going down to. And I went into a crazy deep depression. And at the time, people are like, oh, it's, just post-grad blues. Like, that's what happens to everybody or whatever. And it got super dark. And it was at that time that I started doing this project called Face Each Day, where it's fairly early on Instagram days. And that was the thing that I was like, okay, I know, like, I'm struggling, but I'm going to, use this as like this tool to like help me keep on going. And just like, and I think that was the thing of like, I'm a fan of illustration. I've always been a fan of illustration. Like, let me start that journey. And I did that for a while, and that I think really helped me through that period for sure. I still didn't necessarily at the time know what I was going to do, but I had gotten a studio with Kate Bingham and Bert and Will Bryant, and we created a studio that we were working out of with another rotating cast of characters that sort of came through there. But that's where I was doing more like freelance design, but then also kind of like focusing on the illustration stuff. And then it just kind of started growing, I think, from my work being exposed on Instagram. People started finding out about me. I think the real kind of defining moment where I'm like, okay, this is headed the right way is I got contacted by Warby Parker to do some work for their store that they were opening in Portland. And so that was I think the part where I'm like, okay,
somebody sees me.
This is heading somewhere, and it's kind of the right direction that I want to go.
It seems after like trying a lot of different corporate environments, you get in kind of a studio with a few, friends, really helped you lean into illustration and your work and your craft, and almost created like a safety that you maybe didn't have before.
Yeah.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, I think sharing a studio at that point in time was really crucial for me because I was surrounding myself with people that were doing the things that I wanted to do, and also came from similar backgrounds in terms of like not being, not having gone to school for illustration, being self-taught. I think that was something that really gave me the courage. I think just being around other people that are trying to do the same things that you're doing, I think can give you that courage that you need, that you wouldn't have just working alone.
Mm-hmm. And finding those people, right?
Yeah.
That's cool. So do you feel those kind of, those first kind of daily sharings, is that kind of what made you start wanting to share your mental health struggles?
Yeah, I mean, early on, just with that project, I, got a lot of, people reaching out to me and saying that it helped them. And the more that I heard stories like that, it was just like I knew that this was a way that I could, express whatever was going on with me and just try to be as like transparent as possible. And I've always kind of felt like an open book in that way, where if I can, put myself out there and share what I'm feeling, that hopefully it will help other people.
Mm-hmm. Can you help explain what bipolar disorder is?
Yeah. So I'm not an expert on the subject. But
or even how you started.
Yeah.
Noticing that maybe you had.
Yeah.
That.
Well, so the defining moment. I mean, I had been diagnosed with it, and then I got another opportunity to go back to work at Wieden and Kennedy again, but also not in a creative endeavor, which I should have realized that maybe that wasn't the best decision. But once I got into the building again, I think I got inspired to like want to do creative work in that space because it's an inspiring space for creative people. And so that was a time where I really ramped up and had a manic sort of experience, which is interesting. I think the thing that people don't realize with bipolar, and the reason why a lot of people don't see it, is when you're with somebody that's bipolar and they're in a manic phase, a lot of times it just looks like, oh, they're super creative and they're super inspired and they're like, I mean, I think in the moment it feels like you are unstoppable and you have the best ideas. And, a lot of people that have bipolar and that are, there's a lot of people that have been very successful because, they think they have the best ideas and they're able to like execute those ideas because they have the confidence. It gives you like, really, you totally believe in yourself. And so a lot of people around them don't notice it. They just think they're, doing really well. And then it's the other part. It's when you crash that you crash hard. And so I, had a real manic phase there, and I sort of crashed and burned. And the depression afterwards was like the worst that I'd ever experienced. And so that was the time where I was like, okay, I need to get like serious like medical help for this. And the terrible thing is like it's so hard to get help, even when you know that you have a problem and you know that, for one, when you're in that, dark place, it's really hard for you to get help. So luckily, I had my wife and people around me that were like helping me find help. But to just get in to see people, like the line is crazy long, and it's then to get on the proper medication, like to some degree you're just like throwing, the dice and trying to come up with the right cocktail of things, because everybody's different and not going to respond to the medication. And luckily, I responded really well once I was able to get in and everything. And so that's like the hardest thing. I think that once you get the diagnosis, just trying to figure out how to move forward with it. Yeah.
So what is it? If you were to describe what it is exactly, how would you describe it?
Describe bipolar? It's just those highs and lows. I mean, there are two different sort of diagnoses of bipolar. There's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 is a little bit more extreme in the terms of like your mania is much more pronounced in terms of like a danger to not only yourself but people around you. It's much more destructive. And then the depression end of bipolar 1 is less extreme. Whereas, bipolar 2, a lot of people don't necessarily notice that you're being manic. You're just, being super productive and creative and all these things. But then the depression can last for, months, years. Like that last, episode that I was depressed, like darkly depressed for like, over 6 months, like just feeling like I did not need to exist in this world. Yeah. So it once you get to that level, you're like realize like any amount of mania is not worth that amount of darkness.
Do the pills help regulate that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I've, ever since I've, been on medication, it's the thing I think that people, don't realize is like the medication doesn't like take it all away. Like I still go through times where I'm depressed, and I think that's where a lot of my work comes into play, because I kind of lean on that even more so now as a way, as kind of therapy, and just talking about that experience again is kind of just keeps me wanting to create that work and share it. And I've had such an amazing response from people that I'm just grateful that they've been able to receive help by noticing themselves and things that I talk about, and realizing that other people are struggling with the same things. And
it helps you not feel so alone.
Yeah, for sure.
You just said my work has been a therapy to help me through this. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think the work that I make is a lot of it's ruminating on, I think depression is ruminating a lot on, certain ideas or things that you're telling yourself. And so my work is battling those ideas and trying to figure out ways to, look past, I think, some of the negative self-talk, and just to be on the shoulder of good rather than the shoulder of like the demons telling you that everything is not good. So it's a fight, it's a struggle, and I think the work is my sword or whatever, for lack of a better analogy.
So when you're going through the mania, do you shut down, like not wanting anybody to help you? Is there that feeling of like just wanting to be left alone?
No, I think it's actually the opposite. You want everybody to go along with what you're saying. It's funny, I was just watching a documentary about a cult, and it was nearing the end, and they were like, oh, and the leader got diagnosed with bipolar. And that's a big part of it, is like you're charismatic. You can become charismatic, and you get people to go along with these ideas that you have that you think are great ideas, and you're able to convince other people. So that's the other hard thing, is you don't necessarily see the mania part. My wife didn't see it, It's only looking back that you can be like, oh wow.
So a lot of people might refuse medication because, especially with bipolar 2, they want to lean into that creativity, into that kind of mania that attracts people and, makes them able to create things in the world.
Yeah.
Can you maybe speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a series of portraits that I've done of people, famous creative people who have had bipolar. And I think seeing people that have, found out that they're bipolar and have gone to get help and are still widely successful, I think is a good, just sort of a way to kind of show that you can maintain that creativity and with still getting help, and kind of removing the dark part of it, the part that is the hardest part to live through. It's like, if you can get help for that, you can still have the success part of it, and it's not going to go away. Your good ideas are still there. They just don't need to be followed by months and years of depression with it.
How does the actual work of illustration help you process everything?
I mean, I try to make the work that I create for it, like, simple in a way that sort of cuts through a lot of the confusion around what's going on and the depression, that I can like have a mantra. I think that's what a lot of it is about, is like creating mantras that I can focus on and, go back to. Like, a lot of it is like diary entries when I create these works, and I can go back to them and be like, oh, I'm starting to feel the same way that I felt, a year ago. Like, oh, let me repost the piece that I made a year ago that speaks to that, or make new work that speaks to that and helps me move forward.
I love that. How does your diagnosis affect your family life and those around you?
I don't think my family would necessarily say that my diagnosis is something that comes into play on a regular basis. I mean, being on medication kind of helps normalize everything to some degree, where it's not something that I'm, visibly struggling with on a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, and if anything, it's just them seeing the work that I create. Like, that's the visible part of it. It's like,
They get to witness.
yeah, I think of anybody that's ever, dealt with depression or anything, it's like you witness that, and it's, I don't know. I've never been in another family to kind of experience like what it's like for them. So to me, it's just normal. But.
How do you feel the effect was before you actually got support?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the noticeable part. Like, me not wanting to get out of bed every day, like, that is something that your family will see and notice, and I just can't imagine being on the other side of it, of having to witness somebody not able to get out of bed and not having any, will to continue. It's just like, I can't imagine. It's got to be really hard to help somebody that in the moment doesn't even know how to help themselves,
I want to go into a little bit more the process of how you use the art and the illustration to process things.
Yeah.
Can you maybe just walk us through that?
I think art is viewed a lot as therapy, just because you can use it as therapy for so many different things that people are struggling with or wanting to fight for. Like, it's just a powerful tool in that way. So for me, like, a lot of it just looks like, I think, any artist, like, trying to create work where you're just sort of, I mean, for me, it's a lot of banging my head against the wall, like, trying to figure out, like, what am I going to make? But also addressing, like, okay, what can I make that's going to help get this feeling sort of across in a way that I feel like I've let go and it's been a release. Like, I've made this sort of discovery around these feelings that I have and how I can speak to them in a way that I think, just helps me move past.
I love that. I love the release part of it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a weight lifted once you kind of have figured out a way to speak to it. It's a dialogue for sure of, like, I have this dark part of myself that is trying to take control, and then I'm trying to figure out work that can have a conversation with that dark part and, be the one that becomes victorious out of that discussion, wins the debate.
What kind of healing modalities besides your creative work have you tried?
I think that is a interesting thing that for people that specifically depression and mental health issues is a really frustrating thing. When you're trying to get help, you hear a lot of different suggestions of, like, oh, you just need exercise, like, go for a run, or, like, you need to meditate, or, like, these things that I think people view as, like, universal healing things. And I don't think there is any sort of one size fits all. And I think that needs to be, talked about more because, like,
What works for you doesn't necessarily work for me.
Yeah, no, like, running does not make me feel better about anything. Like, and meditating is super difficult. But I think that's another thing that even with meditation, people are like, oh, it only looks this one way. And I think it took me a long time to be like, oh, actually just drawing is meditation. And so for me, a lot of times it's just like, let me not even try to think of, like, a conceptual, because a lot of my work is conceptual, and so sometimes that can feel like I'm hitting a wall. So if I just get into the studio and just draw and not have a end goal in mind, and I'm just drawing lines, like, that's meditative, where I'm not in my head and I'm, just trying to fill a page.
Yeah, for sure. Part of also doing this is to give people so many different ways into healing,
Yeah.
and not being prescriptive in any way. Like,
yeah. And I think that's great because I think there is a real sense of, like, these are the things that help people get through this. And it's like meditation should work for you, or running, exercise should work for you. I mean, walking is a big thing that I've found that helps a lot. So I do a lot of walking. But yeah.
So you regularly share things on Instagram that seem to resonate a lot for so many people. How do you feel that's been part of your healing? So not only creating the art, but also the relationship that you have with people and how the work that you create resonates.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of the big things that drives me to keep on making that work, because I do get not only comments where people say, like, this helped me get through today, but I, will get long, messages and DMs that are like, I have really struggled with this thing. There's people that have, like, discovered that they are bipolar just by reading sort of some of my experiences. They've, gone and sought out professional help and realized that they were struggling with the same thing. So anything that I can do that, like, helps people even just go and talk to somebody, and because you never know what issue you're struggling with until you seek help, and there's so many different ways that you can get help. So I think it's just taking that first step and recognizing that you're struggling. And I think moving from there.
What do you think about your art resonates with people? Like the message, do you think it's just that you're being vulnerable and sharing of yourself?
I don't know. It would be interesting to hear from other people what it is. But I think the mantra part of it that I spoke about, I think that is helpful. Like, I mean, I think that's why, you know, through the different ways that my artwork gets out there, like the stickers that I make, I feel like people, you know, gravitate to those things because they're things that they can
See and repeat.
yeah, and just look at every day, and you know, or if it's like a print or original piece of art, like it's that reminder that they're not alone.
I love that.
Yeah.
You're a big believer in serendipity. How can it be useful for creativity and well-being?
I think serendipity it's not something that you use. It's something that that by just existing and like, I think putting yourself out there, I think a lot of the experiences that I've had with serendipity, you know, involve getting out of the house. You know, I feel like you're not gonna
Huge win.
Yeah, you're not gonna experience serendipity if you can't get out of bed. And so I think the times that I've run into that is just like trying to get out of my normal routine and you know, going somewhere different, whether that be a walk or, you know, visiting a bookstore that I've never been into. Like that's where I find like, oh, I just stumbled upon this book that seems to speak to everything that I'm struggling with right now, and I happen to find it in this bookstore that I've never been into. So you kind of have to
Show up.
Yeah, you just have to show up. You have to get out of bed and
And the universe is always sending you signs.
exactly.
You just have to see them.
And I think being open to it as well. And I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, so true. So how can we be more open to serendipity?
Just thinking of instances of serendipity, I remember the first thing that comes to mind was when I was in grad school and I was struggling with a project. It was like my thesis, and I thought everything was falling apart. But then I randomly picked up a book and came across a line that kind of like changed everything and like totally took me down a new direction and helped me finish the project. So it's like, but I wasn't necessarily thinking I was going to find the answer there. I was just like, you know, doing something different or just trying to explore curiosity. I think curiosity is a big part of serendipity. I would link the two for sure.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about curiosity.
I think if you're curious, like it can keep you going. I want to see how this book ends, you know? I want to see
What's outside the door?
Yeah. I want to see the next chapter of my friend. I want to see what they're going to experience next. Like I want to, you know, experience another, you know, city, traveling or whatever. Like I feel like there's still so much to experience, and that as long as you stay curious, you're gonna find inspiration, serendipity, like all the things I think come from being curious.
Almost gives you a reason to want to be here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I want to see what's going to happen. There's so much happening.
How this story unfolds.
Yeah, hopefully we find some resolutions to some of these things.
So, you know, sometimes when you're in those dark times, it's just really hard to see a way out. Is there any small little thing that maybe has helped you when you've been in those like really dark times that has helped you kind of see a way forward?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, when you're really in the dark, it doesn't seem like there's any way out. I have a piece that I made where I spell out depression, but I take away the D, E, and I, so it just says press on. And to me, that kind of really sums up just sort of like the mission statement of like just move one tiny step forward. Like, let's just try to get out of bed today. Let's just, try to brush your teeth. Like, let's, try to call a friend. Like, whatever it is, like, make one step that is greater than the step that you took before. And it's not always gonna, sometimes it is one step forward, two steps back. But I think just pushing forward, pressing on.
How do we kind of pave the way for more acceptance, so people can just be more empathetic towards people that are struggling, or just make it a bit more normalized?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about that, speaking your truth and being willing to tell your story. I think when I was first starting to talk about it, there was a concern, like, am I going to ruin my career by like telling people that I'm, have these issues that I struggle with? But the more that people share their experiences, you realize that lots of people are dealing with these same things and are, just in the same way that you're able to function. If you've broken your arm, you put a cast on it, you're still able to do your job. It's like you have to go to the doctor though and tell them that you broke your arm and you need to get that cast, and you need to get the help. So it's more about like knowing that you can ask for help, and that once you do, and once you kind of tell that story, the more times that story is told, the more times it becomes normal, like you said.
What's a daily practice you would recommend people try?
I mean, if you're talking about sort of based on my practice, I mean, I think there is a power in doodling. Like, I think my work can be described as very doodle-based. And so I think that can be a daily practice of just getting outside of your head and taking a page and trying to fill it. And, I think there is something to be said for that action of, filling a page and then not thinking about anything else, but how can I do this? And do that every day.
Like almost just whatever's in here,
Yeah.
put it down on a piece of paper.
But it doesn't even have to be anything. Like, a lot of times when I'm, going through and I'm like really struggling with like a concept or an idea, I will just literally like line next to a line next to a line, and then I'll, try to mix it up, do a squiggle, and then like I think that process alone, for people that say they can't draw or whatever, like, you're drawing and you're only going to get better the more that you kind of just like make those marks and repeat those marks and try to make new marks. Like, you just have to go to the page every day.
I love that. I love that something as simple as making lines could be really helpful.
Yeah. No, and I've talked about that before, because I, as somebody that didn't draw growing up and, didn't think that they were creative, like the kid across the room that is drawing this awesome, like, superhero, like, they're the ones that are meant to draw or whatever. I think people, like, rule that out once you get past that stage. And I've, told people in the past, like, do you know how to, write the alphabet? Because, like, the alphabet has every shape that you need to make a drawing. And so we're all, fluent in drawing. We just need to put the pieces together.
So good. You're a father. What life lessons have you learned that you'd want to share with your son?
I think the big thing that I feel like I'm still learning, and I think is just a great reminder, is don't have to be the person tomorrow that you are today. I think I can, throughout my past have, gotten to points where I feel like I'm stuck, like I'm this person and that's who I'm going to be. And the identity that I have at that time is what I'm going to have going forward, without no real sense of like, we all evolve, we learn new things, we're not stuck, I think people feel stuck. I think that's a big part of depression is, you feel stuck and you feel like nothing is going to change. But, moving on, you become new people. And so I think that's what I would kind of relay is like the best is yet to come, You may feel like you're in a spot now that you think is going to be what it is, who you are going to be for the rest of your life, but it's going to change. So press on.
I love that. And that is the beauty of life, right?
Yeah.
Of that everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Jason, is there anything else that you feel called to share that you feel maybe we haven't covered?
Thinking back about like the different things that I've struggled with and just really traumatic incidents of like, losing my eye to a BB gun, things like that, where I'm just like...
Huge.
Yeah. And it just seems like, how are you going to, go past that? Like, they're just these different scars that we, I think, get throughout our lives that I think, looking back now too, it's like all of those instances, I think, have contributed to who I am. And I think my worldview and my empathy and a lot of that stuff I don't think I would have if I wouldn't have lived through those experiences. Like, I think that's something that I reflect upon a lot is just the empathy that's built out of going through struggles, because you just look at people different. I think you realize that person that cut you off or that honked at you, that you don't know the weight that they're carrying and what they're struggling with, and that if we all just, give people some grace, I think that is going to help us all move on and work through these things we're struggling with. We're all struggling with something, and so we need to just like realize that and figure out how we can all help each other, because it not only takes a village to raise a child, I think it takes a village to raise each other. I think we're all children still. Like, I don't know if we ever get past that point of, needing other people.
No, we don't.
I think the big takeaway for me in a lot of these discussions is just like, speak up. Like, whether it's your struggles, whether it's somebody else's struggles, there's a lot of pain in the world, and there needs to be the people that are on the sidelines that are there to say something.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get free together.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah. Grateful to be here.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share with a friend. You can connect with Into Healing on TikTok and Instagram for more inspirational and behind-the-scenes content, and visit our website, intohealing.com, for transcripts and other goodies. Thank you for joining us.